everyone. This is Lily.
This is Vidia.
And welcome to Girls,
Grace,
and Giggles.
All right, welcome to episode 2 of our podcast, where we will talk about our seconds. No.
Can you imagine? Episode 3, our thirds.
Our thirds. But yeah, if you haven't listened to our first episode where we talked about our first times, make sure you listen to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun moments. So you'll get to know us a bit better.
Yeah, I had fun reminiscing some of my first experiences as well. But anyways, in this episode, we will talk about our stories immigrating to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I think both of us have had different experiences that offer, quite unique perspectives.
Yeah. Because I was a kid, but you're like you were an
a grown adult.
Yeah. So, I mean, naturally, it would come with different kind of experiences and all that.
And I'm guessing like the listeners would be able to relate to a certain extent. So yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if you're not an immigrant, you certainly know people who are or have felt sometimes at some point in our life like a bit fish out of water, or
if you've
in
lived
a new environment or whatever,
lived in different countries, or just like surrounded by multiple cultures. I think
like
there's something relatable,
kids, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Yeah, so why don't we start with sharing about how and when we moved to Canada?
So yeah, I moved to Canada when I was about 3 or 4 years old with my parents, and it was tough to get settled at that time. This was like the late 90s or so, and so like for many of the people at that time, there weren't many settlement services or as many people who were Asian or Chinese, so it was quite difficult to adjust. And so my parents thought it would be best for me to go back to China for a year while they got more sorted out and got their bearings together, and then I rejoined them. So that's what I did. I went back to China for a year and stayed with my grandparents, and then I came back to Canada when I was 6, and then started elementary school, and then have basically been here ever since. So it's very young. And then I remember most of the time just kind of feeling a bit like a fish out of water, just because, I mean, if you listen to episode 1, you can tell that like my first day of school was a bit difficult, because I was very apprehensive about what would I encounter, and I didn't know the language, and I didn't know the environment, I didn't know the teacher, I didn't have any friends. So a lot of those things compounded together to make me very nervous to go to school. But after I kind of went and just got over myself, it was great. And then ESL, it's easier to do ESL when you're younger, because the language is certainly easier to pick up when you're just a kid. So I think I heard somewhere where if you immigrate to a new country and learn a language before 7, then
golden age.
Yeah, then you don't have an accent or something, or you don't have a noticeable accent when you speak that language, and it becomes much easier to integrate, and you're not as you don't sound like a fob, basically. So yeah, that was kind of my experience. And then the first few years of living in Canada, we moved around a lot, and so I think in my life up until now, we probably moved no less than 20 times.
Yeah, that's still crazy to
it is crazy. Well, that grasp. And also just like Vancouver housing, just real estate and stuff, the market is always very hot, and so it made sense for a lot of people to move around a lot, just to upgrade or downgrade or whatever it may be, just depending on the market. So so that's what we did. And you?
And my immigration story is quite different, because I came here first as an exchange student, so like a grown adult, and then I came back, like I graduated and then came back here again for my master's, graduated, and then now working in Canada. So there's been like an upgrade, I guess, every single time. Do you feel like things have been different since you were a student, now like a working professional? Yeah, definitely. I think like socially, as a student, it was easier to like, make friends. Also, it was a different time as well, right?
Well, you see young people all the time. You're kind of forced to see young people because you're in
Yeah.
that environment. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I can see how it's easier to make friends. I feel the same. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, now it's just like everyone is so scattered and it's hard to find
Hmm.
connections.
Yeah. And I think the status difference also makes a difference because when I was an international student, there was like some things I couldn't do. For example, like I could only work for like a set amount of hours, but now I can kind of do whatever.
Yeah.
So um
Freedom.
yeah, so kind of like a local already.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, like a lot more freedom and things that you can do here legally.
Mm.
So
Yes, well, I would hope so. I would hope so.
yeah, so that's kind of like my story. Yeah, moving to Canada at a different time.
Hmm.
So
Do you
yeah.
think it would have been easier if you were younger like me, or would it have been more difficult?
No idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fair,
no
fair.
idea. I don't imagine my family be able to like move
Mm,
to a
mm,
different country
mm, mm.
at all. So yeah, it's just something that never occurred to me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's wild as well, especially because now I'm nearing the age where that my parents were when they immigrated, which is basically in their early 40s, I would say. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of crazy because they were quite established already. You know, they had their own life and their own careers in China. And so for me to think about, like, wow, if I were 40 something, you
Hmm.
know, and I've lived in that place my whole life, and to suddenly uproot everything
Yeah.
into the unknown, right? And with a young family, right? And they didn't know anybody here.
Yeah.
So it's very courageous because I'm like, even
Indeed.
now, like, I don't think I don't know if I would have that strength or that desire to just uproot
Yeah.
everything. Because, like, for them at that time, like, everything was going well. Everything was going well for them in China.
Hmm.
So it wasn't like, oh, we had to leave. Like,
Yeah. You weren't
it's like,
forced.
yeah, no, there was nothing bad really. And so
Hmm.
a lot of, like, our family, especially my grandmother, was like, why are you leaving? Like, you're perfectly fine here. Like,
Yeah.
everything is already good. Like, what is the point of relocating? But I think they really wanted something different for me.
They had a vision.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
they wanted something. They just envisioned a different future for
Yeah.
me and different opportunities and, like, broader horizons, I guess. And so I'm very grateful for that because I feel
Hmm.
like growing up here, I think they wanted to give me things that they didn't experience, that they wanted to experience.
Hmm. Like what? Like
Yeah, I
education
think
or?
education was a big thing, just simply because when they grew up, like, it was a very different kind of system.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I think, and my mom talked about this before as well, where she said, I think I was in grade one. Still, many things happened when I was in grade one. I think there was a time where we would have these, like, spelling quizzes every week for school. And so you have to memorize how to, like, spell these words, and
Hmm.
then the teacher would test you on the Friday, and then she would, like, say a word, and then you'd have to write it out, and then you get graded on
Hmm.
the spelling. And so afterwards, she would grade them and then give the results back to you.
Hmm.
And then she would always put the results page facing down. So everyone's results were, like, face down on the table. So you don't actually know, like, unless you pick up your paper and like, open the
Yeah.
results, then you'll see what you
Yeah.
got, right? Um, and just that one act alone, I think, was really a big culture shock to my mom, because she thought, like, wow, like, the teacher is, like, so respectful of your
Yeah,
own, like,
yeah.
privacy and
Performance.
performance, and doesn't use
Yeah.
that as kind of like a demarcation of, you're a good student, you're a bad student, you got good
Yeah.
grades and you got bad grades, so that, like, bad grades equals bad person, that kind of,
Hmm.
and people would then judge you based on that performance. And so my mom was really shocked when she was like, oh, I think one day she just casually asked me, like, what's your rank in the class? And I was like, I don't know
I
what
don't
that
know.
means. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And she's like, like, how do you rank amongst others in your class, like for your class rank. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what other people got for their
Yeah.
scores. And so she's like, how can you
That's not
not
a
know?
thing.
Doesn't the teacher tell everybody like what everybody else got?
No.
And so I was like, no, like when we get the test, it's all like face down. So you
Yeah,
don't know what
yeah.
other people got unless like you're friends with them and you ask them or whatever and then they tell you or something. But otherwise you wouldn't know. And so this just blew her mind. It was just like bananas. And so I think she was really impressed
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like a
with
culture
that.
shock, but in a good way.
A huge culture shock, but definitely in the best way possible, because she was like, wow, that's really what I wanted. I didn't want
Oh,
people to judge others based on
yeah.
just like,
Or for you to be shamed.
yeah, and it's nothing really to be ashamed about,
Yeah.
really. It's just like because you get bad grades doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Yeah.
Like but oftentimes I feel like, especially in Asian culture where grades are so paramount to like your value, it's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of somehow intrinsically linked already.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps even if the parents are well meaning, that they don't put that pressure on the kid, but the society and the school and the teachers and other students would also like implicitly judge you, if you're a bad
Mm-hmm.
student or if you are not meeting their standard.
Yeah.
And so it's already kind of like a unspoken pressure,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so I think she just didn't agree with that, but she didn't know how to like,
Change
yeah.
that.
So she's
I don't
like,
think you can change that.
no,
You're just one person,
right.
right?
And so it's like, okay, if I can't change, then I can leave.
Yeah, I can change the environment.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
think that's probably what it was. Like, I
She's
think
so forward
education.
thinking. Where
Yeah.
parents are. Yeah.
I'm also like low key impressed because I think
Good
that,
job, Lily's mom.
yeah. And I mean, later on, I didn't get good grades, and so that was I had my own like reckoning to deal with. But like that occurred in grade 4, so we can like bypass those things till later.
Yeah.
But at the very least, I think that yeah, I've had my own struggle with grades,
Yeah.
but
Did you have other culture shocks that were maybe more of a struggle?
of a struggle.
Yeah.
Um,
Things that you had to like adjust.
yeah,
Pretty.
perhaps not me personally, but I think definitely for my dad,
Mm.
or just like my parents in general. So initially, like my dad arrived in Canada on the skilled worker
Mhm.
program, because he was an engineer back in China, and so he was able to receive PR and a permanent residency, like for himself and for his dependent, so his wife and kid. And what happened afterward is that he really struggled to find a job,
Mhm.
and that
Like
was a
because
really
of his language or just like
no. He had good English,
yeah.
so the
Or was
real struggle was because they didn't accept his credentials.
yeah.
And he was very puzzled by this because he said, okay, well, the only reason I got this PR is because I'm an
Of my
engineer.
skills.
Right. Because I'm an engineer. And so, naturally, I thought you'd wanted me for that. And so I thought I would have jobs for that engineering degree and accreditation. But much to his surprise, when he tried to apply for jobs related to engineer, nobody cared about his
Mhm.
designation in China, and they don't recognize that. And so I think that really frustrated him because he was like, well, then why did I get to come here on that basis, right? And then you allow me to enter, and yet you don't accept me for the very purpose of which you like chose me to allowed me to enter. So I think that was that was quite a big culture shock because it was really not what we had
Yeah, and it must be very
expected.
stressful as well.
Yeah, and I have to preface this by saying like both my parents already had a good English level when they arrived to Canada.
Yeah.
And so more than most of their friends, they were already well ahead of the game in the sense that they had pre-established, like they already had a good command of English,
Mhm.
which language, I mean, it's definitely a huge barrier for immigrants. And so Like if you think back to the 90s, this was not the Canada where, I mean, especially in Vancouver, basically it could be like China at this point, like with the amount of Chinese people that are here. But it certainly wasn't the case when we first arrived. And so I think a lot of that was them trying to integrate themselves into this Canadian culture that didn't come easy, because they had to put aside a lot of things that they once held pride in, or like
Yeah,
that they
yeah.
once thought they were good at, and then kind of
Start over,
yeah,
right?
start over and really get humbled by
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
right? Like really, um so my mom had never worked any like manual labor jobs, and then her first job was, at McDonald's.
Yeah.
And so that was a very, I think it does something to you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's kind of a very humbling moment. And then her best friend, I remember that my mom forgot her own birthday.
Oh,
And
because she
because she was
was
like doing the
working
night
too
shift
hard.
at
Yeah.
McDonald's, she was just doing the night shift. And it was her best friend in China that called. And this is like long distance call at the time, so this is like a very big deal,
Yeah.
to wish her happy birthday. And she was so tired, she forgot. Like she forgot her own birthday. And so when my mom's friend called her, like my mom's friend was crying because she just felt
Oh.
like really bad for her,
Yeah.
and all that. But my mom was like, well, then I have to survive. Like I have to. She was much more, pragmatic about it, to say, well, somebody's got to do this to like make money
Yeah,
to
yeah.
survive. So, there's no time for all these like frivolous celebrations and all that. But I think she said she actually forgot.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's kind of how it was in the beginning. But
Yeah. Oh,
the story
wow.
gets better, it's a
Yeah, yeah,
happy
yeah.
ending in the end. But just to say that in the beginning, there is always kind of struggles, and it's part of the adjustment process, as with anything that's difficult and
Yeah.
new, right? So yeah.
Yeah, wow. That was very inspiring.
Is it?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm glad. I'll let my parents know. But yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you had to work jobs too, obviously, like
Mm-hmm.
during the times that when you were a student and stuff.
Yeah, for me, like working part-time actually was a happy thing because I always
Yeah.
wanted to do that because then you'll get, experience, because in Indonesia the culture was not, I mean, we, yeah, as like students, we, at least at that time, we
Mm,
didn't really work part-time because it's just
mm,
considered not safe.
mm.
So for me to be able to work part-time, I considered it like a privilege. Like, I'm, yay, I
Right.
can like earn my own money and like gain experience. So I had no issues. But yeah, I think for me, my culture shock, I remember this one experience. I was new to Canada. I was paying for my grocery stuff at a grocery store,
Mm.
at a cashier. So it was not at the self checkout
Self
line.
checkout, yeah.
So I had like a person
Mm-hmm.
help me, like pack my stuff and like
Mm-hmm.
scan it. And then he started to like have small talk with me. And I'm like, in my mind, I mean, I didn't say this out loud, but I'm like,
Why are
why?
you talking
Why
to
are
me?
you talking to me? This is just a business transaction. I'm just
Just
paying
be a robot
for my
and
stuff.
scan the groceries.
Yeah, because in Indonesia we just don't do small talk, like,
Mm.
ever with
Yeah,
anyone.
that's
So I'm
true.
like, this is interesting. But I did engage in that conversation, but it was just like weird to me at
Do you
first.
remember what like grocery store it was?
Uh
Loblaws.
Something like that. Yeah,
Hmm.
Loblaws or Metro. But I think it
Hmm.
was Loblaws.
Wow.
Yeah, so
So was that the first time you had a cashier talk to you?
I think so. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It was, yeah. I still remembered it. Remember it to this day. I'm like, wow, like this stranger is just talking to me. But yeah, I've come a long way from that to now being able to like
Make small talk.
strike a conversation with strangers myself.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
that,
true. We do small talk.
like, to everyone. Yeah, we do not do that in Indonesia. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that was like, yeah, an experience I still
But
remember.
do you find that the small talk is something that like a skill that you had to learn?
Oh yeah, for sure. It is totally
Oh.
an art.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which
Okay.
I'm still learning. So
why do you think it's an art form or like a skill that you have to acquire?
I guess it depends on your goal in small talk. I think if
Mm-hmm.
it's just, between you and like a cashier, then it's like easier. But
Mm.
I think what's hard is making small talk in office settings or in professional
Ah,
settings.
yes, because you have to see that person again.
Yes, and also I kind of want like to build a rapport. So I want
Mm-mm.
it not to just be, superficial, not just like,
Right.
what did you do on your weekend? I mean,
How is
yes.
that superficial? I already think that's good.
No, like I think it's good, but
Yeah.
like how to go further than that. Like not
Ah.
to just ask what you did on the weekend and
Well, I mean, if they did
to
something
learn more
exciting,
about.
you just build on that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Okay.
see, I'm still learning how to
So
do
then
that.
what if someone is just like, I did nothing on the weekend? And then you're like, oh, okay.
Well, that's
Dot,
good
dot, dot.
because that's also good.
Okay.
Yeah,
To be
sometimes you
like,
just need to rest.
okay.
See, this is
I'm
what I'm
gonna
telling you.
buy-
It is an art. Like, what if someone just tells you, "Yeah, I did nothing. It was just rest."
Okay,
Then
well,
how do you
if they say
expand
it's
on
just
that?
rest, then you can be like, yeah, it's good to have those weekends where you just are able to
Exactly.
relax and whatever.
Yeah, or ask them like, "Oh, did you have a long week? And like, how was it? What did you?"
Yeah. See, there you go.
Yeah.
You're already doing it.
Yeah. So, yeah,
But that's like, you don't say that even in Indonesia with colleagues? You don't have small talk?
yeah, we do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
But that's not considered small talk, or is that
sure, but much less with like cashiers or people.
just like random
Random
on the street or
people,
whatever?
like people who are on a line in the movies with you. You don't do
Mm,
small talk with strangers, basically.
mm.
Um,
So that would be considered really off-putting or like strange?
uh, yeah. Now I'm a little bit because I think I'm a product of like different
Yeah,
cultures.
you're a mix now.
Yeah, having lived in
Mm,
like different places.
mm,
I don't know. I don't feel weird about it anymore, but I would just say it's not as common. Yeah, I
mm,
don't think
mm,
people
mm.
will think you're weird or they would think negatively about you, but it's just not as common.
Mm.
Yeah.
So if you go into like the taxi or an Uber, like in Indonesia, like a
Yeah.
Grab, like you would never talk to that driver.
Oh, I have actually.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, maybe less than compared to here.
But do you talk to the Uber drivers here?
Sometimes I am the one who like
initiates?
initiates the conversation. That's
Whoa!
why I'm saying what I'm saying.
I'm like the
I've
complete
come a long
opposite.
way.
I never talk. But then unless they say something and then I have to answer, like because they asked me a question to be rude not to reply.
Yeah.
But I would never I'm never the initiator in like
I mean, I don't do that often, but
ah.
sometimes I surprise myself. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
wow, who am I?
You know what's really weird is so my mom, like, she doesn't use Uber that often because I mean my dad drives her everywhere, but like the odd times that she has to do it, like I installed the app for her, and then I think she's been in Uber like a handful of times, and then afterward, you know how you have to like rate the person or whatever, and so she gave that person a bad rating. I'm like, Mom, you don't give people like bad ratings.
You just don't rate them.
Yeah, or you just don't rate them, or like just rate them really well. And she's like, and then her reasoning for that was like, oh, he didn't talk the whole time. I was like, huh? I'm like,
Isn't that great?
They're not supposed to talk. Yeah. And so my mom was like, oh, really? I thought that the norm is that they would talk or like make conversation. And then so I'm like, no, the norm is just to like be silent. So I think she was going in expecting this to be like some sort of experience. Right. Like, go on an Uber ride and like engage in a conversation with the driver. Like, she thought this was like a thing. Like she would have to do. But like, I'm like, no, it's just a ride, you know? Like, you don't need to engage if you don't want to. And she was like, oh. And you certainly shouldn't give him a bad rating just because he didn't talk, because that's the norm. She's like, oh, I didn't know. I thought he was supposed to talk to me.
Maybe
like,
because your dad always talks to him. Always talks to her. Like
true.
Every time he drives her.
Well, yeah, they do always talk. Yeah. Yeah, I think she had just like a warped like conception of what it was supposed to be. So it's such a misconception.
We're learning so much about your mom in this episode.
No, because I was just thinking about like small talk and this and that. And it just kind of came out because I was like, you're not supposed to talk
But
to them.
you know what? I can't remember if this is Uber or like another app in Indonesia, but there's like a function. I don't know if it still exists. It will say, "Oh, would you rather the driver talk to
Like
you
be
or not?"
silent. Oh.
And I'm like, "Whoa, this is so
I think they
nice."
have that in Ubers now.
Okay, okay.
But I don't know. Actually, you know what? I heard that it was a function, but I don't see it on mine. So maybe it's only in the US or
I
something. Because
see.
like the updates in certain countries for Uber is like slightly different. So in the US you have like more options or something for some reason.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like,
But
oh
I
wow.
wanted to mention that experience, me with, small talk, because I think communication is just one of the culture shocks that I'm still
Definitely.
like navigating.
Mm,
So, like Canadians are known to be very polite. So
mm,
sometimes I think it's hard to like figure out what they're actually saying, whether they actually like
yeah.
agree or disagree, or whether they think it's good or bad.
Yeah, because
Um,
they just don't want to.
to like hurt your
Right,
feelings.
right, right.
So yeah, sometimes I struggle with that.
It's like, what do you really
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
How do you really
yeah.
feel?
But
Right.
but now that I'm part of the culture and the society here, I'm like, I'm not an outsider.
Mm,
So I think slowly I'm kind of like adapting to this kind of
mm,
communication style as well. So I'm like,
mm.
yeah.
It's kind of like a dance. There's like a push and a pull,
Exactly.
and you have to know the rhythm of it to
Exactly.
be integrated.
Hmm.
But then, so are people much more direct in Indonesia? They're
Yeah,
more
that's the
like
thing. I don't
more.
think so as well, but
Oh, okay,
but we do we say what we mean,
okay.
and we mean what we say. I think
So
at
that
least
is direct. Like, how else would you define being direct?
that is true. But we can also be very how do you say it in English? Like one shot. Oh gosh.
Like yes, more
More.
artful in the way
Yeah,
we
yeah.
give compliments
Yeah,
or
actually we're
negative
yeah.
feedback.
I mean, I'm not trying to generalize. There are Indonesians who are direct, there are Indonesians who are very, very indirect. They will never say no, but they
Mm,
actually
don't want to
don't want
do
to.
something.
But I don't know, at least in my experience, yeah, here yeah, I don't know, maybe.
Right. Yeah, I can kind of get that because generally we would say we I think I agree. Like we are polite as a society, like Canadians. I mean, that's kind of the you know, a
The stereotype,
stereotype, right? To oh, you're a nice Canadian,
which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I don't really see it or like perhaps it's just like, when you're in the environment, you don't
Yeah.
actually become aware of your
Yes.
surroundings as much. But I do think there is a whole passive aggressive thing. That's for sure. So
Mhm.
like we might not be like we might be very enthusiastic when we like something, but when we don't like something, we won't say it directly, but we will be quite passive aggressive about it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's not like I mean, it's not healthy to be passive aggressive, but it is kind of the way we try to express our dissatisfaction in something
Yeah.
because we're not going to just like straight up tell you like no. I
Yeah.
think that's quite hard for Canadians to do.
Right.
But of
Yeah.
course, this is all generalizations and
Yes.
based on our own experiences and
Yeah.
whatnot.
So I feel like I have to learn to read between the lines here. But
Mm,
the more time I've spent being here, I think, yeah, as I mentioned, I don't know, maybe I'm getting better at it. Sometimes I also adopt some of those ways.
okay,
So
okay. So, was
yeah.
there like anything that comes to mind about an example of someone being passive aggressive or trying to, or you adopting certain of these communication methods?
I think someone was passive aggressive towards me once. This is a
Mm,
stranger, so yeah, it's okay for me to tell this story. So I was um, on the SkyTrain, sitting on the priority seat, and I
mm.
was very busy at that time that I didn't manage to see whether there are other like elderlies or people who would need to
The
be on
seat
that
more?
seat.
Yeah.
So it was like totally my bad for not paying attention. And then there was a lady next to me who asked an elderly in front of me that I didn't see.
Mm.
Um,
Would you like to sit?
exactly.
Uh-huh.
And then that elderly said no.
Oh.
And then I heard that.
Oh.
But then the lady was like, yeah, I just don't know if this lady, like pointing to me,
Uh-huh.
um, actually wanted to give up the seat for her. And in my mind, I'm like,
What?
um,
Oh, that's super
yeah, because
shady.
I'm like, if you just tell me like directly, I'd
Yeah.
be happy to like offer the seat, or just tell me like, hey
Wow.
lady, there's like this
That's low key rude.
yeah, there's like this elderly who probably will need a seat. Maybe you can like offer it to him or her. I'd be completely fine, and I'd be like
Yeah.
thankful for, you know, like to be told that
Yeah.
I've just, yeah, haven't been paying attention.
Wow.
But yeah, I just
That
didn't.
girl just called you out.
Yeah,
Wow, I'm
like
shocked.
right next to me, and I'm like, wow,
Whoa.
this is passive aggressiveness, right?
I
Or
think this is more like snarky.
okay,
This is not just passive aggressive. I think
okay,
passive aggressive is probably less, like 1 degree less than this. This is actually
okay,
kind of low key rude and snarky.
okay.
But I mean, yes, it is passive in the sense that she's like not being aggressive to be like, oh, you're the one that's supposed to give it the seat or whatever. But
Yeah.
the way she went about it is very like backhanded.
Hmm.
Wow, that sucks.
And I don't understand.
When was this?
I don't know, a few months ago.
Huh,
Quite recent
really?
actually. So since then, whenever I'm on the priority seat,
You're like super aware.
yeah, I'm like
vigilant
okay,
of everyone around
scanning
you.
everyone who
Yeah.
like comes in and out
Oh,
of the SkyTrain.
dang.
Yeah. But
Wow.
lesson learned, because since then, I've been very attentive.
But you know
But
what? Like, so I think there's a good tip for this. So, like, even if that older person says no, I would just get up anyway to be like, okay, yeah, it's okay. You can sit.
mm,
And then, because I think they say no on instinct to be like, oh, like, I don't want to
like
trouble
inconvenience
somebody.
you.
Yes,
Mhm.
to give up their seat. But then if you just stand up anyway, then it's like, okay, now there's an empty seat. So it would be more unpolite for me to not take it after you've
Mhm.
already
Like offered and like
yes.
stood up.
So then like the dynamics change, you know? But okay, speaking of this, okay, wow, my mom is making a surprise like feature so many times in this
You
story.
have to share this
Completely
episode with her.
unintended. Yeah. Yeah, so this is unintentional, but so with the whole giving up the seat thing. So like very recently this year as well, like my mom and I went on a trip to Europe and then did I tell you about this already?
I
Like
don't
about the
know.
seat thing. So then we were in Albania. I know, a random place, but yeah. Anyway, so we were in Albania and then we landed in Albania and then like you know how for most planes when you exit the plane you go through like the tube thingy, like the tunnel and then you go into the airport, right? But for certain airlines or certain airports, um you have to like go like down the stairs and then take a bus and then the bus will take you physically to the airport itself, right? So everyone has to exit the plane and go onto the bus and then like there'll be probably like 2 or 3 buses depending on how many people are on the plane. And so we're getting on the bus and then obviously it's just going to be like 2 minutes to the actual airport itself because it's just from the tarmac to the gate. And so what had happened is like we're all quite crowded on that bus. And then this younger looking man sees my mother
Oh,
and then gets up and then offers his seat and like she sits down, but like my mom, her like the look on her face was priceless. Like she was so first of all shocked that
yeah.
she was just like and then she felt like rude to not take the seat because he literally got up and offered it to her.
Yeah.
So then she sat down, but like the whole time her face was like her eyes were like as big as saucers, and you could see like the wheels turning to be like, am I that old?
Yeah.
That this person would voluntarily give up their seat.
You're like,
She's
thank
like,
you, but am I that
yeah,
old?
it's like he's like she was just like, I've never been so respected and offended at the same time.
Yeah.
She's
Actually, that's kind of
like-
funny.
Like,
Yeah.
yes, that's kind of him, but like how old do I look, that I need to be the one to be offered a seat because I'm considered an elderly person.
Yeah.
And she's not. She looks fine. She
Yeah.
looks like
Yeah.
so it was hilarious and I was trying to muffle my laughter because the man was really kind because like
Yeah.
and then what's even more funny is that later on, I think it was a connecting flight in oh shoot, I forget where we were. I think we were flying, perhaps it was Frankfurt. I think it was Frankfurt and then to Albania, something like that. And so the man actually like I think it was the Frankfurt airport. So we get to the Frankfurt airport and then like he actually also was taking a plane to Albania. Oh no, sorry, it was Croatia. Oh, sorry, I'm already getting up my geography mixed up. I think it was Croatia, but anyway. So what ended up happening, which is like very unlikely, he actually ended up on the same connecting flight with us as well.
Okay.
And then not only that, like we had to take another bus afterward, and he happened to sit right in front of us on that bus, and it was like him and his girlfriend. And so my mom, the whole time, she was just like reminded of this fact, and I just thought it was so hilarious.
Reminded of his kindness.
Yeah. So we were laughing about it quite a lot for the whole trip, and she was just like, I just like at a loss for how to feel about this. Just so many conflicting emotions about it.
Yeah, to be respected and offended.
Yeah.
Well, these are, I guess, the joys, right, of being like surrounded with different cultures or being exposed with a culture that's different from you.
Yeah.
Do you have any other like joys, you know, being immigrants?
I think the community that we found, I think that was a big joy. Like perhaps it's something about being in a new place, and then you're more open and receptive to people that are in a similar situation as you.
Yeah.
Similar life stage or similar experiences of immigration. And so that naturally bonds people, I think. And so there's a lot of friends that we've made that are still friends with us to this day because of, you know, just being immigrants at around the same time.
Yeah.
And then you form that kind of community.
Yeah.
And so that seems to last a lot longer.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it just kind of bonds people. So I think that's kind of very,
because you have that shared experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Relatable stories, right? Yeah. So, I can relate with that as well, because I guess being surrounded by different cultures, it also like expands your views of like different things, you know, having met people of different backgrounds and being immersed in different cultures.
Canada's just pretty multicultural.
Exactly.
Like, it's definitely a very inviting kind of country.
Yeah.
In that way.
Yeah. So that's totally fun. How about struggles?
I mean,
As
how long
immigrants?
do we have? No. I mean, I think in the beginning it's always a struggle just to kind of find your footing, but perhaps that was more for my parents than for me. I mean, as I was just a kid, so for me, like no matter what, I had to adopt to a new environment anyway. So
yeah, and
I
maybe
don't
as a
think
kid it was easier to do.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
we
moved
very
around
young
a lot.
Yeah,
though. So I think in one way or another, like every 2 years, either I was moving schools or moving house. So like you just kind of learn to adapt quickly, I guess.
Yeah.
And then not to be too hung up on like being in a certain place and calling that
I think
home.
that's another like benefit. Being immigrants, you become adaptable.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be, I think.
Yeah.
You have to be. But
like
but it helps. It's a good life skill. And I think it's also because my parents were like first generation. I think that if like one day if I have kids, then they'll be pretty settled, right? Like in Canada.
Yeah.
So then it's not the same. Like, yes, I guess there will be like, you know, second generation immigrants or something, but it's different because it's already been established.
Yeah.
It's only really the first gen that is the one that
have more of a tumultuous.
Yeah, exactly. That experiences the most uprooting and the most change and the challenges that come with that. But for second and third gen, it's more like, oh, this is my place. Like this is where I'm like this is what I call home.
Yeah.
You know? So they have a much less, you know, defined connection with like the place of origin than you know, first generation, for example. Yeah,
I'm first gen, so I guess I have struggles.
yeah, you are first gen.
My struggle, I think, would be maintaining relationships and friendships in both places. So wherever I am, whether I'm in Canada or in Indonesia, there's always, you know, friendships that I have to manage. I mean, I'm grateful for all these friendships, but sometimes I just feel like, oh, if only I can bring everyone like to just one same country.
Or you can like clone yourself.
Yeah. Like I'm thankful for the long distance friendships that I've been able to keep up with, like together with my friends. But you know, sometimes it's also hard and yeah.
I mean, maintaining adult friendships, that's
That is
definitely
already
another
difficult.
episode on its own.
Yeah.
But yeah, for you, I think it's additionally difficult because, of course, time zone is another
Oh
challenge,
yeah.
right? But also, like, that's kind of where you grew up, and then that's where you found
Yeah.
a lot of familiarity and a lot of friends, and then
Mhm.
perhaps like leaving that and the comforts of that,
Yeah.
it's like you have to relearn and rebuild your new
Mhm.
network and your new foundation, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
yeah, that's not easy.
yeah. But you know what I've noticed, like having been in like different places to live in,
Mm.
um, it's so heartwarming to find Christians in different
Mm.
places and
Yeah.
to see the similarities
Mm. And
as
differences.
Christians. Yes. I mean, you can have like completely different backgrounds or upbringing, but like you can share like the same heart and love for
Mm.
God. And it's just so
Mm.
beautiful, like to see that
Mm.
like
Yeah.
wherever you are. So I'm like,
Agreed.
oh wow, this is
God is really
yeah,
big.
yeah. So all right. I guess I have one question just for fun. If you
Okay.
could immigrate to another country now, where would it be?
I
I
mean, you
think,
already know
yeah,
my
I know. I
answer.
already know the answer.
Yeah, so I've definitely told Vidia this more than once, but like out of all the countries in the world, the only place that I think I would voluntarily relocate to
Do we need a
is
drum roll? I think.
Brrrr.
Dung, 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 dung.
Yeah, is Switzerland.
Woohoo!
Yeah, and I just
Great
say that
choice.
thank you. I think so. Cuz I just feel like um it's a very beautiful place. It's a very well developed country. It has a lot of, good things going for it. A lot of
Hmm.
good benefits, and a lot of good education, good upbringing, good
And you
like
speak French as
environment.
well. So,
Yeah, yeah, and like safety, just like everything all around. It just seems like a very ideal place to be.
mhm.
But my goodness, is the immigration hard? It is very difficult to immigrate there, and even if you're born in Switzerland, doesn't mean you will be able to get Swiss citizenship. And I know this firsthand because um, I had a client who basically his son was born in Switzerland and yet does not have Swiss citizenship
Mhm.
because apparently the family was living in France at the time, and so the Swiss, but he just happened to be born in Switzerland because I think he lived like near the border,
Yeah.
and so France and Switzerland is very close already. And so the Swiss government, despite him being physically born in Switzerland, was not willing to grant him Swiss citizenship. So you can imagine how difficult it is to have Swiss citizenship. Just like even by birth is kind of the default, by which you're granted citizenship. So this was like a shock to me. And
You have to earn it.
yeah, and like you can't marry into it either.
Exactly.
You can't like inherit it. You can't be born like what can you do really? Like you just they really do make you earn it. And so yeah, unfortunately I don't think I can earn it. So
Well, it's
that
clear that you have looked into this.
there, yeah,
Yeah.
I actually have. Because I'm like, let's see, if I were to find a Swiss man, is this gonna work? Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it does not work. So that's a mystery there. But I think it's because they know how good they are, so they're like, yeah, we're not gonna give this so easily.
Mhm.
It's just,
You
yeah.
have to prove your worth.
Yeah, exactly. So they are like they are the princess, and we have to like woo them.
Understandably so, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, I would say Switzerland, but I know that it's probably just a dream at this point. So Canada's still pretty good.
Yeah.
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 And you?
Yeah. I don't know if I have an answer actually, because immigrating is pretty.
It's hard already.
It's a
Do
big.
you want to do it again?
Yeah, it's a big deal. Like uprooting your life
Mm,
from wherever you are.
mm.
So I guess doing it once is probably enough.
Enough for a lifetime.
But I think like if I were to do it, maybe I don't know if I have settled like in the future or something, like just
Mm,
to not do it all over again by myself, because it's quite
mm,
hard
mm, mm,
like
mm.
doing it on your own. um yeah, I don't know, maybe New Zealand. Not that I've been there, not that I've looked into the immigration policy, but I've
It's
only,
also quite hard.
yeah, I bet. I've only heard great things about New Zealand. So,
Yeah, same,
yeah,
same.
so I think maybe that could be an
Yeah,
option.
that's a good option.
Right? Right?
Yeah, yeah, New Zealand is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
So,
actually thought about, so there's a few of my friends that I grew up with in Vancouver, and now nearly all of them are in the US, and they're pretty settled in the US.
mhm.
And so that's quite interesting to me because, Canada, we only have one neighbor. And that neighbor happens to be, arguably the strongest country in the world. So that has its advantages and disadvantages, but it definitely makes the cross border immigration certainly a potential option.
Mhm.
So who knows? Maybe that
Yeah.
could be a possibility.
Yeah, likewise, I guess, for the Americans, right? To come to
Yeah, but
Canada.
usually it doesn't go the other way around. Like
Oh,
there's not that
okay.
many Americans wanting to come up here.
I see.
But that might change with the whole election and everything, but yeah, who
Yeah.
knows?
All
But
right. Yeah, so that was our immigration stories. I hope
yeah, and a
it was,
segue to like some other random
yeah,
things on the
yeah, as
side.
always.
Yeah, but this is fun. I
Yeah.
think this is good. It
But
gives like a good overview of like, the life of a
mhm.
immigrant.
Yeah, and I guess quite an interest, not like, yeah, like a crucial part of our identity as well. At
For
least for
sure.
me, because it's like very recent. So
Yeah,
yeah. All right.
sounds
So
good.
thanks guys for listening. See you at the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.